No one inside that multi-million-dollar glass boardroom imagined that the first person to save the CEO's life would be the one they had always treated like a shadow. And none of them could have fathomed that, within a few minutes, the entire power hierarchy of Hartwell Industries would be overturned because of one man and one final breath. That morning, the 72nd floor of the Hartwell building in Manhattan glowed like a stage. Evelyn Hart, 52 years old, powerful sharp as a blade, honed to perfection, stood at the head of the conference table, presenting the global expansion strategy. Her voice was unwavering, every figure landing in the air like a tack. The senior executives, each earning over $500,000 a year, leaned in at every word. To them, Evelyn was untouchable until the very next second. A small hesitation, so slight almost no one noticed. Then Evelyn's hand clutched her chest. Her breath fractured, her shoulders trembled, and in one strangled inhale she collapsed to the floor. A chair toppled, papers scattered, yet no one stepped forward. No one knew what to do. The people confident enough to run a corporation worth tens of billions stood frozen like stone statues. Meanwhile, out in the hallway, Michael Turner was cleaning the last streak of dust near the doorway. He did not belong here, at least that was what they believed. A janitor, 36 years old, who had worked any job he could find just to survive a man with calloused hands and a back permanently bowed from pushing a heavy supply cart every night. But when he heard the panicked scream from inside, "She is collapsing," Michael sprinted in without a second thought. And that was the first shock. A gray shirt appeared among a forest of Armani suits. Executives stared at him as if a wolf had burst into a gala. Get Out CFO Charles Benton barked, his voice sharp and heavy like lead. "You are not authorized to be here," another vice president shouted. But Michael did not hear. He could not hear. All that existed was the pounding of fear and the memory of a CPR class he had taken years ago at a community center in exchange for free food vouchers. He dropped to his knees beside Evelyn. No breath, no response. Her lips were turning the color of ash. Terror flashed across Michael's face, fear that he was too late, fear that a life was slipping away right in front of him. But beneath that fear was a strange, steady calm, the instinct of someone who had seen death more times than anyone else in that room. He placed 2 fingers on Evelyn's neck. No pulse. Air hissed through his teeth. Then Michael began. 1 breath. 2 breaths. His hands laced together. He pressed down hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Behind him, angry voices rose. "What is he doing? Look! He is touching the CEO! Pull him away immediately!" A heavy blow struck Michael's back, sharp and stinging like a blade. He gritted his teeth, but did not stop. Another strike came down on his shoulder. He staggered, but his rhythm never broke. In his mind echoed the trainer's words from years ago, "If they are not breathing, you are their lungs." So he continued. 25, 26, 27. The air in the room felt frozen, broken only by Michael's counting, echoing off the glass walls. Then suddenly, Evelyn's chest lurched. A violent cough burst from her lungs, as if dragged from the edge of a cliff. Air rushed into her body. The room erupted. Some cried out. Some clasped their hands like they had witnessed a miracle. The same leaders who had stood watching like spectators now rushed in, fumbling and frantic. Michael collapsed onto the floor, his back burning his shoulder numb, his hands trembling uncontrollably. His breath was ragged as if he had run a marathon. But he had saved her. And not one of them said, "Thank you." Charles Benton stepped forward, his face pale, but his disdain perfectly intact. "Who is he?" "Michael Turner, janitor." Michael answered through shaky breaths. Charles's expression hardened instantly, as if the truth were filth on the floor. "You put your mouth on the CEO of Hartwell Industries," he asked, each word striking like a slap. Michael had no chance to respond before the boardroom doors flew open, and the faint wail of an ambulance siren drifted in from afar. But there was one thing no one in that room knew. In that exact moment, Michael Turner's true identity had revealed itself, not the man they assumed he was. He was not just a shadow in their system, not just a janitor. He was the only person in that powerful room who knew how to save a life. And that truth would soon shake their entire world. No one inside Hartwell Industries understood that the whispers began spreading from the very moment Evelyn Hart drew breath again, one person returning from the edge of death, and another stepping out of the shadows to save her, only to be shoved immediately back into the abyss. That evening, New York City drifted past the bus window in long streaks of light, like stretched threads of memory. On the rickety bus heading toward Harlem, Michael Turner sat curled against the seat, one arm wrapped around his throbbing back. His body trembled with every bump in the road, but his eyes trembled, more shaken by humiliation, fear and helplessness woven together. From that distance, no one would have recognized that the exhausted man with his head bowed was the same person who had just given the CEO Evelyn Hart another lifetime. Not a single person. When the bus stopped in front of the aging apartment block, Lily, his 7-year-old daughter, with a crooked ponytail and eyes that always seemed to try too hard to be older than her age, ran out and wrapped her arms around him. "Daddy, why are you late? Does it hurt?" Her tiny voice quivered. Michael forced a smile, the kind of smile that had become his mask for years. "I'm fine, Lily, just a little tired." It was the first lie in a chain of lies Michael used simply to survive each day. Janet Miller, the 65-year-old neighbor, with a thin frame and a limp in her step, stood in the kitchen doorway, worry obvious behind her thick glasses. "You look like you fought the whole world, Michael," she murmured. He tried to smile again, but it shattered instantly when a wave of pain twisted up his spine. She saw it. Lily saw it. Yet he insisted, "It's nothing. Just a busy day." They did not know that busy meant he had nearly been beaten to the point of broken bones while trying to save their CEO's life. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Michael lay on the thin mattress, with his hand pressed over the swelling bruise. Memories flickered back like a choppy film. The contempt in Charles Benton's eyes, someone shouting, "Pull him away the baton," striking his back, the strangled sound in his throat, as he continued pumping Evelyn's chest. He had believed foolishly that when Evelyn opened her eyes, everything would change, that someone would say thank you, that saving a human life would be acknowledged for what it was. But in this world, the truth was far more brutal. The next morning, New York was as cold and busy as ever, as if no one had nearly died on the 72nd floor the day before. Michael stood in front of the Hartwell building, holding a plastic bag with his homemade lunch. He inhaled deeply. Maybe things had been cleared up. Maybe they understood he had only been trying to save her. Maybe he could go back to work as usual. A fragile sliver of hope slipped into his mind, dangerous but persistent, like the final effort of someone sinking in deep mud. That hope shattered the moment he reached the glass doors. The security guard raised a hand, his gaze cold as steel. "You can't enter," Michael blinked. I work the night shift on the 72nd floor. Name, Michael Turner." The guard checked the list. It took only a second. "You are banned from entering. Order from HR. No explanation, no chance, no one listening." The morning wind swept across the plaza, carrying a hollow chill that sank straight into Michael's bones. He circled around to the back entrance, clinging to the last thin thread of hope. But minutes later, the night shift supervisor approached him with an envelope in hand. "This is your termination letter. Effective immediately." Michael barely heard the rest inappropriate conduct involving senior leadership because his ears had already gone numb from the first sentence. The truth stabbed him like a blade, sharp and cold and clean. He had been fired for saving the CEO's life. He drifted down the street, not remembering how many blocks he walked. Only when his phone lit up with a barrage of notifications did he understand the disaster erupting around him. A clipped video. A blurry photo, twisted to spark suspicion. Accusations spreading. He kissed her. That wasn't CPR. Comments slicing like knives. Michael dropped onto a bench at the bus stop, burying his head in his hands. They had turned him into a monster. Because he was poor. Because he was nameless. Because he was the easiest target. Across the city, in a quiet hospital room, Evelyn Hart jolted away cold sweat, coating her forehead. She heard a voice calling her from somewhere far away. "Come back, don't die on me." The voice of a man. A voice she did not know yet, but would have to. Because it belonged to the man they had just destroyed. And the moment she discovered that truth, everything would explode. Evelyn Hart awoke in the pale silver light of early morning, her face drained of color, as though she had just returned from a negotiation with death itself. The hospital room was so quiet, she could hear every steady beep of the monitor each sound, reminding her she was still alive. But what startled her was not the sharp pain in her chest. It was the voice. A rough male voice, strained with desperation, echoing from the darkness of her cardiac arrest. "Breathe, come on, breathe, come back to me." That voice did not belong to anyone on the board, not a doctor, not security, not anyone she had ever known. It was raw, sincere, terrified, as if her life mattered to him in a way she could not begin to comprehend. Evelyn closed her eyes again, trying to pull an image from the fading memory. But all she could see was a shadow and a pair of hands pressing against her chest, rough hands, warm, strong. Hands unlike those of the $1,000 suits that shook hers every day. At 6 o'clock that morning, Evelyn stood by the hospital window, staring down at the endless stream of cars. New York kept moving, as if the CEO of Hartwell Industries had not nearly died the day before. She had drifted in and out of consciousness, at least 4 times during the night. Yet the only thing that clung to her mind was the question, who saved me, and why are they hiding it? When her assistant stepped inside with a stack of documents, Evelyn spoke before she had a chance to open her mouth. "Where is the report on the person who performed CPR on me?" The assistant hesitated. Human Resources said it was handled internally. Nothing serious. Nothing serious. Someone had saved the CEO in the middle of a boardroom and was not worth mentioning. A cold shiver trailed down Evelyn's spine, not from fear, but from betrayal. "Bring me the security footage from the boardroom that morning." "But ma'am, right now." Her voice was sharp as a blade. 20 minutes later, she sat alone in her hospital room, a laptop open in front of her. The video began slightly shaky, capturing the moment she was standing at the front of the room. Then she watched herself freeze, clutch her chest, and collapse. Evelyn went still. For the first time in her life, she saw herself powerless. Executives jumped back, stepped away, panicked, shouting, not knowing what to do, like a herd of animals whose leader had fallen. And then the door flew open. A man in a janitor's uniform rushed in, pushing the cleaning cart aside. Evelyn leaned toward the screen, her eyes widening. He dropped to his knees beside her without hesitation, checked her pulse, threw his entire strength into chest compressions, his breath shaky from exertion and fear. Even through the hazy footage, his face was clear enough to reveal fierce determination. Sweat dripped from his brow onto her skin, in the video blending with his rasped breaths. Voices yelled behind him, "Don't touch her! Pull him away!" She saw Charles Benton lunge forward, yanking the man by the shoulder. He was dragged sideways, skidding across the floor. But he got up immediately, tore himself loose, and continued the compressions, defying all of them. Evelyn could not look away from the footage, not because she was watching her own survival, but because she was witnessing the cruelty of those around her. Then came the defining moment. Her chest jerked. She coughed violently. Life rushed back into her. The man collapsed forward, nearly folding in half from exhaustion. Evelyn covered her mouth. A tremor ran through her entire body. He had saved her. Alone. In a room full of people who did nothing but watch. She rewound the footage, trying to get a clearer view of his face. His voice echoed faintly through the camera. "Come on, don't die." The exact same voice from her fragmented memory. At the end of the recording, she saw Charles Benton blocking the man's path. "Who are you, Michael Turner? I am a janitor." Charles's face twisted in disgust. Then the clip showed security shoving him out of the room without a single word of thanks. No one stepped in. No one defended him. No one told her the truth. Evelyn pressed a hand to her forehead. Her skin was burning not from illness, but from the fury gathering inside her. She called the head of security, directly, her voice so cold he audibly caught his breath on the other end. "I want his entire file. Address, employment status. Who ordered the termination? Ma'am, that may take some time. No, I want it within 1 hour." When Evelyn ended the call, she stared at the frozen final frame on the screen. Michael Turner, breathless eyes bloodshot from effort, shoved aside like a criminal. She knew exactly what she had to do first. Find him, immediately, before the world crushed him beyond repair. A cold wind from the Hudson swept across Evelyn Hart as she stepped out of the glass doors of Mount Sinai West. She did not call her driver. She did not need to. She did not want to. The CEO of Hartwell Industries, a woman normally escorted by 3 layers of security, opened the door of her own Mercedes with her own hand, as if the title, "The Most Powerful Woman in Manhattan," had been temporarily suspended. Today, she was not acting as a CEO. Today, she was acting as a human being who had been pulled back from the hands of death by someone her entire system had tried to erase. The address of Michael Turner was listed in the security file, an aging building in East Harlem, where metal stairways screeched with every step. Evelyn drove past stained sidewalks, faded graffiti and street corners, untouched by wealth. With every block, her chest tightened. What state did he come home in? The man who saved my life, thrown away like a criminal. The question drilled into her like a spinning blade. The car stopped in front of building number 148, the exterior blotched with rust and peeling paint. The balcony railings tilted as if ready to collapse. Evelyn stepped out her expensive shoes, instantly coated in dust. She did not care. She knocked on the door of apartment 3B. It opened just a crack, revealing the wide, dark eyes of Lily Turner. The girl wore a faded T-shirt, her ponytail slipping sideways. Her bare feet chilled on the concrete floor. She froze when she recognized Evelyn's face from billboards across the city. You're Miss Hart," Lily whispered. Evelyn lowered herself, softening her voice so she would not frighten her. "I'm here to see your father." "Is he home?" Lily bit her lip, nervousness clouding her eyes. Daddy is sick. He can't get up. I made soup for him. I gave him cold medicine, but he's still tired. He sleeps a lot. I don't know what to do." Her voice trembled like a thin thread. A sharp, icy pain stabbed straight through Evelyn's chest. "May I come in?" Lily nodded. The door opened fully. The apartment was dark, cracked walls, a heater groaning weakly. The air carried the smell of dampness and exhaustion. In the corner, on a thin mattress, spread directly on the floor, Michael Turner lay curled up. He shivered, his face gray, from fever lips, dry breaths uneven. A man physically drained and emotionally shattered, to the point he no longer wanted to stand. Evelyn moved toward him, her chest tightening once more. "Michael!" she whispered. No response. She placed her hand on his forehead. Burning hot. Almost without thinking, Evelyn said sharply, "Lily, call emergency services right now." The girl scrambled away in panic. Evelyn gripped Michael's hand, the same hand that had pushed life back into her body. A hand now limp and slipping away. "No, no, you don't." Evelyn murmured, her voice shaking the same way it had when she was fighting for breath. "You saved me. Now it's my turn." Michael's eyes flickered open for a fraction of a second, as if he recognized the familiar voice in the fever haze. But his eyelids dropped again. From the kitchen doorway, Janet Miller appeared, bracing herself against the wall, her face exhausted. "He hasn't eaten in 2 days," she said quietly. "He keeps mumbling, 'It's not fair, it's not fair.' Then he falls asleep again. I wanted to call an ambulance, but he said he didn't want to bother anyone." Evelyn tightened her hold on his hand. "You don't carry this alone." The rising wail of an ambulance siren grew louder, pulling every nerve in the apartment taut. Minutes later, the medical team burst through the door. They worked quickly, pulse weak, dehydration, exhaustion, dangerously high fever. "We need to take him right now," one of the paramedics said. "And I'm going with you." Evelyn replied, her voice firm as any multi-million-dollar directive she had issued in a boardroom. No one argued. They lifted Michael onto the stretcher. As they pushed it toward the door, Lily grabbed Evelyn's sleeve. "The doctors will save my daddy, right?" Evelyn knelt, placing a steady hand on the girl's shoulder. "Your father saved my life, and I will do everything in my power to save his. I promise." It was not the promise of a CEO. It was the promise of a woman who understood she now stood on the line between what was right and what was unforgivable, and she had finally chosen justice. As the ambulance cut through the crowded streets, Evelyn watched Michael lying motionless among the IV lines. One thought consumed her. If she had arrived just 1 hour later, he would have died. And that death would have been caused by the very system she built. But what Evelyn did not know was that such a death would have buried another truth waiting for her. The truth that Michael Turner was not just a janitor, but the only person who dared to save her, and the only person Hartwell Industries could not afford to lose ever again. The ambulance siren tore down Amsterdam Avenue, slicing through the chaos of traffic like an arrow. Inside the vehicle, Michael Turner lay motionless beneath the harsh white lights, each drop from the IV line falling like a silent countdown. Beside him, Evelyn Hart sat rigid, her hands clenched until her knuckles turned white. Michael's stillness made it harder for her to breathe than any heart attack ever could. Weak pulse. Blood pressure falling, a paramedic said. Not panicked, but sharp enough to cut the air in half. Evelyn stared at Michael's sweat-soaked face, her own heart twisting painfully. "Don't do this to me. Don't give up," she whispered, her voice splintered with fear. In that moment, the security footage replayed in her mind Michael dropping to his knees, defying an entire boardroom to keep her alive. Michael Turner had risked his life for her, while the people she trusted most had stood frozen like useless statues. And now, as Michael fought for breath, she understood one thing. With brutal clarity, if he died, it would be a sentence on her soul. The ambulance screeched to a stop at the entrance of the Mount Sinai private wing. When the doors burst open, cold night air flooded in, carrying the sound of patient names echoing through speakers and the sharp smell of disinfectant. The medical team rushed the stretcher inside, and Evelyn followed so closely she cast a shadow over the wheels. Clear the way, possible full-body exhaustion and respiratory failure. Dr. Morrison is standing by. Evelyn had never felt so small a billionaire CEO chasing after a janitor, while doctors and nurses sprinted past her, as if she were just another desperate relative. When the emergency room doors slammed shut, Evelyn was forced to stop. She pressed her hand to the glass, as if she could hold Michael inside the world a little longer. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Evelyn had never been patient with anything in her life yet. Now she sat like a statue, shoulders curled inward, thoughts in chaos. Every set of footsteps in the hallway made her jump up only to be crushed with disappointment again. The coffee on the table had long gone cold, but she did not even notice. When the door finally swung open, she shot to her feet. Dr. Morrison approached, and for once his stern eyes softened. "How is he?" Evelyn asked, her voice raw. "We stabilized his pulse and breathing," the doctor replied. "Michael is severely exhausted. High fever for days, dehydration, stress-induced collapse. He will recover, but he needs time." Evelyn exhaled slowly, but relief did not bring peace. It arrived tangled with guilt. "How long has he been like this?" she asked. "At least a few days." Likely after a major emotional shock. A shock. Evelyn knew exactly what that shock was called: Hartwell Industries. When she entered the hospital room, Michael lay there, his face less pale than before, but still drained of life. Lily sat beside the bed, her legs swinging anxiously, fighting tears. Janet rested in a chair, one hand pressed to her chest, as if she were praying. Evelyn paused in the doorway, taking a long, steady breath. Lily looked up, her eyes shining with fragile hope. "He will live right, Miss Hart." Evelyn stepped forward and laid a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "You are stronger than most children I have ever met, Lily. And your father is strong too. He is fighting to stay with you." The girl hugged her worn, stuffed bear tightly and nodded. Evelyn pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. She studied Michael's face carefully. He was no longer the man slumped beside a mop bucket, no longer a silent shadow in Hartwell's massive machine. She saw a human being, a man she owed her life to, a man her own system had tried to crush. And that realization struck fear into Evelyn's heart. If she did not act now, she would allow his spirit to die, even if his body survived. She took his hand. His fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. The first sign of his return. Evelyn leaned closer, her voice low but sharp with determination. "Michael, you saved me. Now it's my turn. I will not let you disappear. I will not let anyone smear your name again. I promise." Outside the window, snow began to fall soft and thin, painting the city in a muted gray-white glow. A quiet beginning. But Evelyn did not know at the very moment she made that vow someone else across the city had already begun to move. Someone who had also seen the footage. Someone who needed Michael silent. Someone powerful, and someone with everything to lose. The sky over Manhattan hung heavy and gray, a thick blanket weighing down the entire city. As cold winds sliced between the glass towers, a silent confrontation was beginning to form, not between equals, but between two people no one ever imagined would cross paths. One was CEO Evelyn Hart, newly returned from the edge of death. And the other was just the janitor in everyone's eyes. Until today. Michael woke to the familiar sting of hospital disinfectant. The dim lights above flickered faintly, trembling, as if ready to fall. His body felt crushed under stone, his mouth dry, his head pounding as though someone had struck him. But what stunned him was not the physical pain. It was the person sitting beside him. Evelyn Hart, CEO of Hartwell Industries, a woman who lived in a world so far from his that it barely felt real, sat quietly, her hands resting on her knees, her eyes locked on him, with a worry he had never seen from someone so powerful. Michael tried to move. What are you doing here?" Evelyn offered a small smile, though her voice shook with emotions she had never known before. "I saw everything. I owe you my life, Michael." He looked away. "But they said I did something wrong." "I know." Her voice lowered, carrying 2 days of suppressed fury. "And that is my fault. I let others make decisions in my place. I let them create a story that was completely false." Michael stared out the window, his voice barely a whisper. "No one believes me. No one believes people like me." Evelyn stepped closer, resting her hand on the bed rail. "I believe you. And I will make sure the whole world knows what you did." Those last words, "what you did," rang in Michael's mind like a clear bell. It was not the accusing tone he had endured for days. It was recognition, respect, something he had waited his whole life to hear. He closed his eyes, swallowing the rising tide of emotion. A soft knock sounded. Fiona Redford, Evelyn's legal aide, entered, with a thick stack of files pressed to her chest. "Miss Hart, I have the documents." She glanced at Michael with genuine respect, not pity. "And I think you should see this." Evelyn took the files and opened them. Each page was a blade slicing straight into Michael's dignity, the termination letter citing inappropriate conduct, the internal report claiming he engaged in unauthorized physical contact, an email from Charles Benton to security reading, "Handle this quickly. Do not let it escalate." Evelyn's grip tightened until the edges of the papers curled. "Benton," she growled. "He hid everything from me." Michael stared at the bedsheet. "I know there's no way I can go back. I know I'm just... No." Evelyn cut him off so sharply he flinched. "You are not just anything. You were the only person in that room with the courage to save me." Silence filled the room. Outside the window, snow thickened, melting into streaks of water against the glass. Michael swallowed hard. "But I have no degree, no voice. No one will listen to me." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment, as if choosing each word with precision. "Then let me give you a voice." Michael frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Evelyn pulled a chair close, sitting beside him like she was about to sign the greatest contract of her career. "I want you to take a new position at Hartwell." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Director of Employee Care and Welfare. Michael's eyes widened, as though she had spoken absolute madness. "Me. I'm just not a janitor." Evelyn said, her gaze blazing like fire. "You are the person who understands better than anyone what my company has been missing. You see the shadows we have ignored for years. You know the isolation faced by those at the very bottom." Michael shook his head, overwhelmed. "I don't know how to do that." "You already have," she answered softly. "You did what an entire room full of executives could not do. You saved a human life. That is the foundation of every welfare system." A deep quiet settled between them. Michael had no words. Evelyn did not rush him. Finally, she stood and placed a business card on the bedside table. "When you are ready, call me. I will not pressure you, but I refuse to let your talent be buried for even one more hour." Michael looked at the card. Her name gleamed under the hospital lights. Evelyn Hart, Chief Executive Officer. But today, he did not see a CEO. He saw a human being, and so did she. Yet as she stepped out the door, a shadow lingered behind the hallway glass. Someone watching her every move, eyes cold as a blade. The figure whispered, "He cannot be allowed to rise." And the real war was about to begin. 3 days had passed since Michael Turner was brought to the hospital. And in those 3 days, his world had stayed curled in on itself, like a door slammed shut by a violent gust, chaotic on the outside, suffocatingly silent within. But something had begun to shift. Quiet, yet powerful, Evelyn Hart was no longer stepping away from this story. She was not standing on the sidelines, not staying silent, not hiding behind authority. She was preparing to tear apart the very system she had spent years building. On the 4th morning, Michael was discharged. He was not fully recovered, his strength still thin, his steps still slow, but Lily held onto his hand so tightly it was as if she feared he might slip away from the world again. Janet Miller walked beside them, leaning on her cane and muttering, "You need rest. A lot of rest." Evelyn met them in the hospital lobby, not with the posture of a CEO, but with the grave expression of someone determined to repair a mistake she refused to ignore. "My car is waiting outside," she said quietly. "There is somewhere I want to take all of you." Where Michael asked, his voice still hoarse, "To your new home." When the Mercedes stopped in front of an entirely different apartment building, clean, warm, safe in Forest Hills, Michael froze. He stared at the building's sign, the neatly trimmed trees, the glowing windows. "No, I can't accept this," he said, shaking his head. "I can't afford. You are not paying," Evelyn replied, "because this is not charity. This is compensation, justice." Lily dashed up the stairs and shouted from inside the open door, "There's a big kitchen, Daddy. There's a room just for me." Janet stepped in slowly, her trembling hands gripping the polished wooden railing. "My God, I never thought I would see a place like this again." While the others explored the apartment, Michael stood alone at the doorway, unable to step fully inside. The door was open wide, yet he trembled, as if crossing the threshold would make the entire place vanish like a mirage. Evelyn stood beside him. "You deserve a safe place," she said. "A place to breathe, a place to start again." "But why are you doing all this for me?" The question broke out of him, his voice rough. Evelyn studied him for a long moment, and for the first time since she met him, she let her true emotions show pain, regret, and resolve. "Because I allowed your life to be destroyed under my name," she said softly, "and I cannot live with that truth for one more second." A heavy silence filled the gap between them. Evelyn lowered her voice almost to a whisper. "Michael, I have lost many things in my life, climbing to where I am, but none of them ever shamed me as deeply as knowing you suffered for 3 days because of my negligence." A faint tremor crossed Michael's eyes. He had never heard an apology with such weight, especially not from the woman standing before him, a woman the world believed untouchable. Inside the apartment, Lily ran out and hugged Michael from behind. "Daddy, we have a new home. You'll be happy again, right?" Michael knelt and wrapped his arms around her. "Yes, sweetheart, this time I'll try." But as he rose, Evelyn spoke words that shifted the air around them. "Michael, there is something important I still need to tell you." He turned, seeing her eyes sharpen. The softness of gratitude vanished, replaced by the steel of someone who had uncovered something unforgivable. Evelyn pulled a thick folder from her coat. "I reviewed every internal email, every report, every camera file, every message." She placed the folder in his hands. "This was not just wrongful termination. Michael, they built an entire narrative to destroy you." Michael opened the folder. The first page, a copy of Charles Benton's email. Get him out of the company. Fast. No trace. The second page, tampered camera stills. The third page, a complaint filed by someone who had never even been there. It felt like someone was tightening a fist around Michael's throat. "You were their sacrifice," Evelyn said, "their shield for their own dignity. And I will not allow that to happen ever again." "What are you going to do?" Michael asked. A cold smile flickered across Evelyn's lips, the smile of someone who had finally found her target. "I am bringing you back to Hartwell," she said, "not as a janitor." She stepped closer, her voice heavy with purpose. "You will return as someone they can never crush again. And when the moment comes, you will be the one standing on the stage while those who ruined you will be the ones forced to bow." Michael swallowed hard, his heart hammering. And I think you already know, Evelyn continued the most important battles always begin the moment someone decides they are done being afraid. The apartment door closed behind them. But outside in a dark car parked across the street, a figure watched everything unfold, eyes cold, lips curving into a dangerous smile. Charles Benton. And he whispered, like delivering a sentence, "Let's see how long you last, Turner." Dawn laid a pale golden layer over the red brick buildings of Forest Hills. But inside Michael Turner's new apartment, that light touched only the furniture, not the quiet dread sitting heavy in his chest. His fingers trembled slightly as he made his first cup of coffee since being discharged. The smell was warm, but inside he was as cold as the snowy night when Evelyn found him. Across the kitchen, Lily giggled with Janet as she colored with her brand new set of pencils. They looked peaceful, almost as if every storm had finally passed. But Michael knew that peace was as fragile as a fresh coat of paint. One touch, and it would crack. He stared at the folder Evelyn had given him the night before. Pages filled with truths he was not ready to face. He had not been pushed out of the company because of a misunderstanding, but because of a plan. A deliberate, organized plan. One bearing the fingerprints of the second most powerful man at Hartwell Industries, Charles Benton. Michael placed his hand on the folder as anger rose inside him, the kind of anger he had spent an entire lifetime avoiding, the anger of someone who had been trampled on for far too long. Before he could think further, his phone vibrated. Fiona Redford calling. Michael swallowed and picked up. "Michael, you need to come to the Hartwell Annex. There's something." Fiona's voice was low, urgent, held together only by restraint. "What happened?" Michael asked, his heartbeat pounding. A pause, then a sigh. "There are new rumors, and they're worse than anything you've seen." In another part of the city, inside a dim midtown office, Charles Benton leaned back in his leather chair, his eyes gliding coldly across his laptop screen. He made a call, his voice steady and chilling. "He is not coming back to Hartwell. I will not allow that," Benton said, staring at Michael's photo on a gossip site. "I told you to find anything that can stain his reputation. I want him erased." The voice on the other end rasped, "We found his juvenile record and the past due rent notice. I'll release everything within an hour." Benton smiled. "Do it. And make sure people believe Evelyn is acting under emotional influence. No one wants someone like Turner inside this company." The call ended. Only the hum of the air conditioner remained cold and empty, just like him. Back in the Forest Hills apartment, Michael stared at his phone after Fiona delivered her final warning. "You need to come as soon as possible. Evelyn is so angry, we're afraid the 30th floor might lose power." Michael turned back and saw Lily drawing a picture of two people under a blue sky. "Daddy, are you going back to work today?" she asked, eyes glowing with hope. Michael crouched beside her and brushed her hair gently. "No, sweetheart, I just need to go for a little while." "You'll come back." Her voice was thin as a stretched thread. Michael nodded. "I always come back." Janet approached, leaning on her walker. Go, dear. Face it. Don't let them decide your life one more time. Michael inhaled deeply, as if that breath were the last rope holding him to himself. 1 hour later, he stood in front of the annex building, sleek, modern steel and glass, reflecting the winter sky. Inside, curious, skeptical, and pitying eyes jabbed at him from every direction. Fiona met him with a weary expression. "You haven't seen the news, have you?" She held out her phone. Michael looked. In an instant, the blood drained from his face. The rebel of Hartwell Janitor, hiding juvenile record, exposed Michael Turner from CPR controversy to a troubled past, is CEO Evelyn Hart protecting a dangerous man. They had dug up his past, twisted it, turned him into a threat. Michael felt his head spin. "No, it wasn't like that. I only took cough medicine for my mother." I know, Fiona said firmly. "But they don't care about the truth. They care about the story." The elevator doors opened. Evelyn Hart stepped out. Not regal. Not icy. Today she brought a storm with her. "Michael." Her voice was soft, yet sharp as a blade. "Come with me." The conference room doors shut. Soundproof glass. Outside, employees held their breath. Evelyn stood before Michael, not as a CEO speaking to an employee, but as a warrior preparing to decide the course of a war. "Do you think I am going to let them do this to you again?" Her voice was low, but fury rolled beneath it like an underground wave. Michael looked down. Maybe they're right. Maybe I shouldn't come back. Maybe I don't deserve no. Evelyn cut him off the word explosive. "You deserve more than anyone here." Michael's eyes lifted, startled. Evelyn stepped closer, placing weight on every syllable. "And from this moment on, I will fight for you." She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward him. "We are going to do the one thing they fear most," Michael whispered, trembling. What Evelyn looked straight into him, her eyes blazing with clarity, as if she finally saw the only path toward justice. "We bring you back to Hartwell, not as someone broken." She paused, "but as the man who will change this entire system." At that exact moment, just as the meaning of her words sank into Michael's chest, the conference room door burst open. A frantic employee rushed in breathless. "Miss Hart, the media just released new footage. The entire city is watching. They're saying Michael deceived you." Michael felt the blood freeze in his veins. Evelyn. She only tightened her grip on her coat, ready to walk straight into battle. The 12th floor conference room trembled under the chaos of breaking news. The air grew thick, heavy with pressure, as if the entire building itself were holding its breath. On the large central screen, headlines flashed one after another, each one landing like a blow aimed straight at Michael Turner's dignity. CEO Evelyn Hart deceived by man with criminal past. Hero Janitor accused of manipulating senior leadership. Is Hartwell covering up a scandal? Evelyn watched each headline appear and vanish, her face tightening cold and sharp like ice about to fracture. Michael stood behind her, his heart twisting so hard he thought his body might collapse. Fiona burst into the room, slamming the door shut, so hard the glass shivered. "We have an internal leak," she said, breathless. "Deep. Someone is feeding the press every hour." Evelyn did not turn her head. "Benton." Without a doubt, Fiona replied. He sent Michael's juvenile record rent notices, even his mother's medical file, to 3 tabloids this morning. Michael blinked. How did he even get my mother's medical file? That is supposed to be confidential. Fiona could not meet his eyes, because he accessed the company's partnered medical system. Illegally, intentionally. Evelyn turned then, and in that moment there was no CEO standing in the room, only a woman overflowing with rage. Then the game ends now. Evelyn stepped into the center of the conference room. Every move she made seemed to press weight into the walls. "Michael," she said, her voice steady and commanding, "listen to me carefully." He swallowed. "You don't have to protect me anymore. I'm just no." Evelyn raised a hand sharply. "You are no longer just anything, and I am not defending you out of pity. I am defending you because you are right." She inhaled deeply, then spoke her plan with unwavering resolve. "I want you to stand in front of every employee in the annex. I want you to tell your story. I want you to take back your voice." Michael stepped back. "I can't. People hate me. I'll only hurt your reputation." Evelyn moved closer, stopping only half a step away. "Michael," she said softly, but with razor precision, "you saved my life when no one in that powerful room dared to move. If you can face death, then you can face a room full of people." Michael looked down at his hands, the same hands that had trembled while saving a stranger's life, the same hands that had been labeled dirty, low, unworthy. But Evelyn saw what he could not strength. 30 minutes later, an urgent email went out. All annex employees assemble in the third-floor auditorium in 10 minutes. No reason given, no explanation. But everyone knew this was not a normal meeting. When Michael stepped onto the small stage, he could hear the whispers clearly. "Oh no, him again. Liar. Can't believe the CEO is protecting him." The auditorium lights hit him directly. Michael felt his stomach twist, his skin chilled, his breath stuttered. He wanted to run. But on the right side of the room, Evelyn Hart walked in, no announcement, no entourage, just a single unwavering look at him, strong enough to hold him upright. Michael placed his hand on the microphone. It shook. His voice cracked on the first sentence. "I am not the man the media says I am." A wave of silence rippled across the room. Michael drew a breath, and for the first time, he did not look away from hundreds of watching eyes. "I was arrested when I was 16, he said, "for stealing a bottle of cough medicine to save my mother. I am not proud of it, but it is the truth." Some of the whispers faded. "I fell behind on rent. I worked 3 jobs at once. People called me trash." His voice grew stronger, fueled by something burning deep inside him. "But I never hurt Miss Hart. I never touched anyone with bad intent. I only tried to save a life." Michael paused, eyes blazing. "I am not perfect, but I am not the monster they created." Silence, heavy, solid, immovable. Then, from the back of the room, a single security guard began to clap. Alone, but deliberate. Another joined, then another. And suddenly, the entire auditorium erupted into applause like thunder. Evelyn stood at the door, watching each face shift from doubt to thoughtfulness, from thoughtfulness to respect. And Michael, for the first time in his life, he stood tall. At the very peak of the applause, the auditorium doors burst open. A panicked employee ran inside. "Miss Hart, something's happened. Benton, all of his emails and messages have leaked. The media has everything." Every eye in the room turned to Evelyn. She tightened her fists, her gaze sharp as a blade. The storm she had been waiting for had arrived. And this time, she would not run. She would destroy the system that had tried to break Michael Turner. The news of Benton's exposure shattered the quiet in the auditorium like breaking glass. Eyes that had only moments earlier shifted from suspicion to respect, now widened in shock. A wave of murmurs rolled through the room, but only 2 people remained absolutely steady: Evelyn Hart, Michael Turner. Evelyn cut through the crowd like a blade through silk, her gaze cold, sharp, and dangerous enough that employees instinctively stepped aside. Michael followed her, his heartbeat pounding, as if he were marching into battle. And in truth, he was. They headed straight for the executive floor on level 30, where the powerful figures who once ordered Michael's destruction were now waiting for the storm to strike. The door opened. Charles Benton stood there, trying to hold on to a confident posture, but his pale face betrayed him. His laptop screen displayed rows of leaked emails, marked with red headers: internal misconduct, breach of ethics, illegal access of medical records. He swallowed hard, then attempted to regain authority. "Evelyn, we can discuss this privately." "No." Evelyn stepped forward, her words slicing the air in half. "There is nothing left to discuss privately." Michael stood behind her, his gaze firm. Benton flicked an irritated glance at him. "He does not have permission to be in this meeting." Evelyn turned her head, her stare so sharp, Benton instantly fell silent. He must be here, because everything that happened started with him. Benton opened his mouth, but Evelyn continued, her voice rapid and striking like a hammer. "I have read all your emails. You ordered HR to terminate Michael Turner without consulting me. You altered video evidence. You accessed medical data illegally. You built a narrative that turned the man who saved my life into a criminal." With each accusation, Benton stepped back. "I did it to protect the company," he snapped, desperate. "No. You did it to protect your pride," Evelyn replied, "and to hide the fact that you stood and watched me die without lifting a finger." The final sentence struck the room silent, leaving Benton drained of color. A perfect unmasking. Evelyn turned to Michael. "Do you want to say anything?" Michael had planned to say no. But when he faced the man who had ruined his life, something surged inside him, not hatred, truth. He stepped forward. "I don't want revenge." Michael said, his voice low, but carrying clearly through the room. "I don't want you to lose everything, but I will not let you destroy another person's life ever again." Benton let out a strained laugh. "You think you have the right to speak to me? You are still just." "He," Evelyn cut in, "is the new director of employee welfare, and he has more authority than you believe." Michael froze. Evelyn had not told him that before. She had not waited for him to decide. She had entrusted him with the role as a declaration. Benton lost all control. "Impossible, I object to this position." "I will." Evelyn lifted her hand. "You no longer have the right to object." She placed a folder on the table. "This is your suspension from all positions at Hartwell Industries, effective immediately. Security is waiting outside." That was the moment Benton understood every escape route had been closed. By Evelyn. Using the power he once believed only he could wield. 2 security personnel entered. Benton tried to hold his head high, but his eyes revealed everything fear. He shot a glare at Michael. "This is all your fault," Michael replied calmly. "No, those were your choices." Security escorted Benton out. The door shut. Silence. A chapter of corruption ended. Evelyn turned back to Michael, studying him. "Are you angry with me for announcing you as director before asking?" Michael exhaled as if releasing a heavy weight. "I don't know if I'm capable." "You are more than capable," Evelyn said. "You have the heart of someone who understands injustice from the ground up. No training manual can teach that." Michael smiled, small, genuine, rare. "So," he asked, "where do we begin?" Evelyn opened the door and gestured for him to follow. "We begin by rebuilding this company the right way," she said. "And by showing everyone that the voice they once ignored is the voice they need most." Michael glanced at the glass wall, reflecting his image beside Evelyn's. No longer a silent shadow with a mop. No longer a man pushed into darkness. Today he stood tall. And he was seen. As they stepped into the elevator, Evelyn spoke quietly, but every word carried the weight of a new truth. Michael, I believe you will change, Hartwell. The elevator doors closed, reflecting the image of a man who had once been buried at the bottom, but who now held the chance to lead thousands like him. A new chapter began. Not for Evelyn, not for Hartwell, but for every silent worker who had ever been hidden from the light. And the one leading the way was Michael Turner. From the perspective of an expert in leadership ethics and corporate culture, Michael Turner's story is not simply the journey of a janitor becoming a new voice for justice. It is a powerful reminder that the greatest organizations are not redeemed by flashy policies or empty promises, but by individuals who refuse to surrender their dignity even when the world insists they bow their heads. In a system where power was once treated as an unshakable fortress, Michael shows that true strength is born from courage, from the unwavering choice to stand on the side of what is right, and from the ability to see the human being on the other side of fear. Evelyn Hart also offers an essential lesson: no leader is perfect, but a great leader is one who dares to correct mistakes, dares to step out of silence, and dares to defend those the system has abandoned. If this story resonates with you, please like the video to spread the message of integrity and transformation from within. Subscribe to follow more journeys of meaningful change. And before you leave, comment with the short phrase, "Dare to stand up," to remind one another that sometimes one person's courage is enough to shake an entire system.